I'm Evan Smith, the CEO of the Texas Tribune. Thanks for joining us for only our second in-person event since March of 2020. How weird. A conversation on local control from the pandemic to public safety. I know we'll talk about some other stuff as well. We've missed you. It's good to be back together. We're very fortunate to be hosted again tonight by our good friends here at Batch Craft Beer and Kolaches. Please give them a big hand. How great to have good friends here willing to host us. These are good Austinites, good Texans, good public citizens who believe that conversations like this one help to create more thoughtful and productive citizens and strengthen our democracy, which, to be honest, could use some strengthening. Our friends here at Batch, Noah Litt and Josh Litt, have agreed to host us at various times in November and December for a series we've christened Batch O Politics. Get it? It's like the ultimate dad joke. 3 weeks from tonight, I'll be sitting down in this very spot with the police chief of Austin, Joseph Chacon. And then the following Monday, we'll be joined by the superintendent of the Austin Independent School District, Dr. Stephanie Elizalde, for two more great conversations, December the 8th, and then December the 13th. Go to texastribune.org/events to RSVP. We will be absolutely promoting those two conversations. And because I have to do a little bit of business, while you're on our awesome website, please consider supporting our nonprofit newsroom, texastribune.org/join. Before we begin, I want to thank the sponsors of our Batch O Politics series, our presenting sponsor, the Loewy Law Firm, as well as another sponsor of tonight's event, the law firm of CAMMACK STRONG PC. Please give them a hand, acknowledge their support. Our distinguished guest and I will be talking tonight for about 30 minutes, and then they'll answer your questions. Some pre-submitted, and we hope some asked by you here in real time. There's a microphone up front. We'll ask that you line up and ask their questions, and we would really love to welcome you into the conversation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Austin Mayor Steve Adler and Travis County Judge Andy Brown. The mayor, yes, you can applaud, that's fine. The mayor was first elected to lead what is the nation's 11th largest city in 2014 and was reelected to his second and final term in 2018. An attorney and one-time chief of staff and general counsel in the Texas Senate, he is a native of Washington, D.C., and a graduate of Princeton University and the University of Texas Law School. Full disclosure, he is the former chair of the Texas Tribune's board. And he and his wife have been donors to our nonprofit newsroom. As I say to him all the time when we're together on a stage like this one, he is about to find out how little that gets him. The judge was elected to Travis County Commissioner's Court in a special election in 2020 and is on the ballot for re-election in 2022. Previously, he served as finance director and senior advisor to former U.S. Congressman Beto O'Rourke's U.S. Senate campaign and as a campaign manager for U.S. Representative Lloyd Doggett. He chaired the Travis County Democratic Party from 2008 to 2013. He is a native of Austin, a graduate of Colorado College and the University of Texas Law School. Please give these two a proper hand, Mayor Adler and Judge Brown. Gentlemen, good evening. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
It's good to be with you, but I will confess it's good to be with anybody still here in month 20. And in fact, I want to start there. I want to begin by taking us all back to March 6th of 2020. Mr. Mayor, I remember participating on that day, that afternoon, in an event with you at Capitol Factory downtown. The word on the street was because of this scary virus, you were going to cancel South by Southwest, which was unthinkable in that moment. You were very tight-lipped about what you were going to do. But a short time later, you did indeed announce at a press conference that South by would be canceled. That was, for me, the end of the before and the beginning of the during. So here we sit 20 months later at a public event, no masks on or very few, a crowd of people gathered before us having the kind of conversation we would have had back in the olden days. The vibe is the vibe of the olden days. Businesses are open. Schools are open. Most important, the Starbucks near my house has taken down the plexiglass around mobile ordering. Are we finally, Mr. Mayor, in the after? Is the pandemic over?
No.
Why not?
as you look around at other parts of the country, we're seeing numbers that are beginning to increase. We're seeing that right now in El Paso. We're seeing that in other states. So long as we still have this way too big block of people that are not vaccinated, there is still going to be ample opportunity for this virus to spread. People that have been vaccinated, while the vaccination helps keep them out of hospitals, keeps them from dying, 25% of the virus that's passing right now is estimated to be passed by people who are vaccinated, and it's finding people who are not vaccinated. So this is going to be with us at some level until we get more people vaccinated. It's helpful that now we can get to kids above 5, and everybody should be getting vaccinated. But so long as we have too many people, we're still going to.
What is I know you know this, what is the percentage of residents of this city eligible who are fully vaccinated as we sit here today?
Fully vaccinated at this point, probably about, 65%?
Yeah, if you count 5 plus, it lowered a little bit, I think 67, but we're still way above the state average.
We're early in the 5+ period, but the point is you're also probably, Mr. Mayor, higher as a city than most places in Texas.
We are. In fact, the city's done really well. You know, the mortality rate in Austin, half of what the state mortality rate is in Travis County.
Yeah.
If the state mortality rate was the same as we have here in Austin and Travis County, over 30,000 Texans would still be alive.
And Judge, you have talked all through the pandemic about the success that you all have had in the county in getting people vaccinated. Obviously, it's a similar conversation, city and county. It's not the exact same conversation. What has been the trick or the hack here where the county has been so successful where some other counties have not?
We're following science. I think, honestly, I have had a great relationship with the mayor throughout this whole process from day one when I started, actually a year ago today. Been a county judge for 1 year.
It's not too late to send a card.
That's right. That's right. But no, I think the secret has been we had Dr. Escott, now we have Dr. Walks. We all meet several times a week with the hospitals, with the Austin Public Health, with the Travis County vaccine effort, and it's really been a collaborative effort. I mean, soon enough we'll get back to fighting each other on other things, but for this process, it's been a really cohesive effort.
You agree with the mayor that the issue is we don't have enough people vaccinated, even if you've done better than many or most. Not having more people vaccinated is the enemy of the end of this thing. I mean, what the mayor said is probably right. The conventional wisdom has moved to this thing will never end, that it's going to be more like the half-life of plutonium, gradually going to the horizon line, but never actually getting there, right?
Yeah, no, I do agree. And with the kids, so we were at 76%, but now that there's eligible people down to 5, I think we've actually done a good job again as a city and a county vaccinating children from 5 to 11 already. I think we've gotten 13% of eligible kids, whereas the state average is about 7%. And so, yes, I 100% agree that until we get to something around 85%, fully vaccinated of the entire population, it's going to be the same way.
Mayor, are you satisfied that if Austin does its part, it doesn't make a difference what the other communities in Texas does? I mean, the fact is that we are as a state at about 54% fully vaccinated. Now, again, those numbers will hopefully go up now that children can be vaccinated. I'm old enough to remember, as the saying goes, Governor Abbott on Fox News early this year saying, we're just about to get to herd immunity, which would be 75 to 90%. We may never get to 75 to 90% in this state based on vaccine hesitancy, vaccine refusal, choices people have made, and the lack of a mandate that would require, in some cases, that. Does it matter to you if Austin is good but other places are down in the 50s or the 40s?
There is no such thing as Austin doing good so long as there are other places with the numbers that
all
low.
Connected.
It is all connected because people travel. You know, there's a disproportionately high number of the people in our hospitals from counties around us that are not vaccinated at the same rate that we are.
So if there had been the opportunity to get into the conversation around local control, ask both of you, Mayor, if there had been the opportunity for you to be more aggressive in requiring stuff, if the state had given you that opportunity, do you think we'd be better off than we are today?
Yes. We'd be better off. We'd be better protected, and the people that chose to stay unvaccinated would be better protected. Yeah. I don't think that the argument that everybody has a right to decide whether or not they get vaccinated, and then still expect to be able to live life as everyone else does, also means that you have a right to potentially infect other people, or to a right to take a disproportionate amount of space in our hospitals. None of these things are rights. Now, someone can decide whether or not to get vaccinated, but if you're not vaccinated, then you really have to kind of step back and not put other people at risk.
Judge, if we're not in the after, is that why? Is it the absence of mandates that has caused us to not be in the after, or is it that plus other things?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, absolutely. I think that we'd be in a much better place as a state. I think we could have a state that has the same numbers, the same percentages as Travis County. And if that were the case, like the mayor said, more people, 30,000 more people would be alive today. Yeah. We would have a much lower rate of sort of the repeat of the curve. Like when you get real scientific, the UT has helped us a ton in figuring out what the curve of the sickness of the infections looks like. And the ability to require that people wear masks and get people vaccinated means that curve is going to be lower, that you're going to have smaller spikes, and that you'll get out of these surges quicker. And that's something that, because of Abbott's policies, that makes it a lot harder to get through those spikes quicker with fewer deaths and fewer sicknesses.
Right. Let the record show, Mr. Mayor, that the governor's name just came up by name 10 minutes into this conversation. It took this long. Do you blame...
The record reflected it was not me.
No, I know that.
Okay, just saying.
Well, you and the governor have a very loving relationship.
But now that it's been brought up.
Since it's been mentioned, do you blame the governor specifically for where we are? I mean, there are Democrats, as you know, and you're in a nonpartisan office, but it's not like anybody thinks you're a Republican. There are Democrats in office who will every day call out the governor and say, we are where we are because of this guy.
Well, I think that the policies that the governor had certainly has contributed to the messaging to our community and to our state that we're not doing the things or don't need to do the things that would keep us safe. But I wouldn't say that it's just him, because I think that it's something that is happening in the Republican Party across the country, right? So we have our governor that seems to be in a race with the Florida governor, that seems to be in a race with what's happening in Georgia. It's how this became a political partisan issue is just outrageous. People get vaccinated all the time. This didn't happen with polio. This didn't happen with children going to elementary school and having to take vaccinations in order to be able to get to school. This was a created thing, and it's really unfortunate.
Judge, this is something that I've not been able to solve for in all this. I've not been able to ask anybody this and get a satisfactory answer. You have little kids. Your kids go to public school, right? Your kids go to school. Aren't they obligated by the system that we all live in to be vaccinated against rubella? I love saying rubella in the middle of all this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mumps, smallpox, whatever it is. There are vaccine mandates currently in place that, as far as I know, no one is challenging.
Yeah.
You go to a college these days, thanks to our legislature, not so long ago, there is a requirement that you be vaccinated against meningitis. Now, there are exceptions, there are opt-outs, but the point is the default is that that's the case. And as far as I know, we've had no pushback on those mandates. We've only had a pushback on this mandate, right?
Yeah, there's some exceptions, of course, but yeah, overall, I would say not. And very happy that my kids 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, I can't even remember now, on a Saturday, both got vaccinated. They're 5 and 6, and we're going to get that second shot in a week or two. And again, the rate of people doing that in Austin and Travis County has been very high compared to the state. So I think you're right. That's a really good point that hopefully maybe we can be a little less partisan when it comes to kids.
Have you run the simulation, Judge? I'm sure you have. What Austin and Travis County would be like, or where we would be had XYZ happened?
That's a really good question. Where we would be that's kind of
in other words, if you had the ability, if the state had stayed out of your lane and you had been able to do what you wanted, have you run the simulation and figured out, well, we would be X as opposed to where we are right now?
It's a really good question. I have not run that simulation. My sense is, again, that we would have a much higher vaccination rate, and that we would have gotten through. One of the biggest problems of the surges is that our hospitals get overrun. We get maxed out ICUs, and that has effects on not just unvaccinated COVID patients, but on people going to the hospital for emergencies or just regular surgeries. And so, I think we'd be in a place where, frankly, there could have been a lot more sort of optional surgeries over the past couple of years than there have been. I think our healthcare system would be in better shape because it wouldn't have been as taxing on all the nurses and nurses' aides who work in our ICUs.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'd be in a very different place.
The judge mayor is bringing up a great point. We've all heard the stories of, we think we know that this actually happened. X person gets into a car accident in a city where hospitals are overrun by COVID patients and can't be treated or can't get a bed or can't get into the emergency room. That's obviously one aspect of this. If you run the simulation, that person has a much better prognosis for recovery or survival. Right?
Absolutely, and these are not just stories. I mean, we all saw the soldier outside of Houston that died of gallstones, which is a 30-minute procedure, but he couldn't find a hospital that he could get into. And here in Travis County, we've had people that have tried to get into our hospitals because they needed critical surgeries and they were in parts of the state they couldn't get it, and we've had to turn them away. Because we didn't have space in our hospitals. We had people in our emergency rooms, our ICU units, that weren't physically in the ICU units, that are out in hallways and getting that kind of care when we were at our peak. And that's what we have to avoid, because there has got to be an impact on the quality of care when you are overtaxing your spaces and your staff. And the staff has been a huge issue. I mean, imagine what these folks have gone through for 20 months, and it's just been. And to your question, we haven't run the models, but the University of Texas did, and they're online, and you can see the projections that we saw when we were being asked what steps do you want to take, and it's real clear. UT says if people wear masks, this is what it looks like. If people are not wearing masks, this is what it looks like. I mean, the models are very predictive.
Let me stay on this question of the mandate kerfuffle for a second, Mr. Mayor. Contrary to what seems to be popular belief in large parts of Texas, the answer to every question is not subject-verb liberty, right? That is, in many places, the point of view right now. But can't you understand, Mayor, the desire of people and businesses, what have you, not to be told what to do by the government? Don't you have any sympathy for that point of view that seems to be driving this pushback against mandates?
I do. I mean, and I understand that. And ultimately, if we're going to get this part of the population vaccinated that has chosen not to get vaccinated, we're with a group right now, I think, that, I'm not sure what you could say to convince those people, and the fact that it's a mandate maybe gets them to push back even more. But nobody has a liberty interest in putting other people at risk. And even in this state, when the governor said to governments, we're not going to let you mandate for businesses what they can or cannot do, right? I mean, that's what he said. And we were saying there's still not a liberty interest to be able to run into a crowded theater and yell fire. But we hear what you're saying, Governor. Then when businesses wanted to protect their own customers and their own employees by setting themselves for the rules in their businesses, our governor then came in and said, you can't do that.
We're going to pull your liquor license, right?
I'll
2
pull
restaurants in Austin, right?
Laundrette and one other, the
and
TV station.
And phrases. I mean, next we're going to hear that the bare chest lobby doesn't like the no shirts, no seating rule, right? And then they're going to come in, and that's going to be the end of it. I mean, Judge, let me ask you a version of the question I asked the mayor. Why do you hate freedom?
Great question. Fair enough. So I do have to say, in all this, obviously, there's a lot of partisan stuff in it. There is one thing where the mayor and me and Chief Kidd of TDEM worked really well together, and that was at the beginning when everybody wanted a vaccine. There were not enough vaccines to go around. We got together with the Republican county judge in Bastrop County, the Republican county judge in Caldwell, the Democrat in Hayes County. We asked TDEM would they give us additional vaccines to give out if we did this big thing together at Circuit of the Americas, and they agreed to it. We ended up, I think, getting about 200,000 extra vaccines kind of for the region as a result. So, differ with the governor on most things probably, but there are times throughout this when I think people did pull together, especially in the early times on vaccines, of trying to get them out quickly.
It happened early times on masking. I mean, the governor did not want to tell everybody that they needed to mask. And he eventually let it up for individual communities to assert their freedom and their liberties to decide locally what they wanted to do.
Early.
Right. And Republican cities, mayors that are Republican joining with mayors that are Democrat, county judges, Republican and Democrat. We all got together and cities and counties acting alone. Vast parts of the state got covered. The governor ended up letting us adopting that and going and making it statewide, but it started out as a bipartisan effort to keep people safe.
Well, and the result was that the governor got 2 primary opponents from his right as a result of it, right? That was the result of this. Judge, demonstrate some self-awareness, please. Is there anything that you should have done knowing what you know now that you wish you had done? Is there anything that you shouldn't have done knowing what you know now?
I mean, knowing what I know now, I think, here's a good one. So on the vaccine rollout, that example I gave of Circuit of the Americas, it was amazing. We had some event folks out there that had a wonderful orchestration of cars coming through. There was just this mass drive-through thing. It was really great that there were so many people getting vaccines. It was really efficient. The thing we found out, though, after a little bit of time of that, is that there's still entire populations in eastern Travis County and eastern Austin that it's hard for them to get out to Circuit of the Americas, to get to the Delco Center, to make appointments. And we started, APH and Travis County, Constable George Morales has really led on this, of now going into neighborhoods, to grocery stores in the Eastern Crescent, working with schools in the Eastern Crescent to make sure that vaccines are just available as many places as possible. And I think that is one thing that, when we did do it, when the kids, the pediatric vaccines came out, we did approach it differently, and we worked with Del Valle ISD, with Austin ISD, to get vaccines first available to those communities. So yes, I think that's one thing that in future pandemics we need to make sure that we're
done.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, let me ask you about 2 criticisms of your leadership, particularly of the city, as it relates to the pandemic. One is you overreacted. You hear people say that all the time, overreacted. And the second was that you've been inconsistent. I've been trying to sort through what appears to be a false charge against you, that somehow you permitted the ACL Music Festival, but you wouldn't allow a Veterans Day parade to happen. Now, my understanding is that the story is more complicated on the Veterans Day parade than that. But you've heard this, that you've been inconsistent. You've picked and you've chosen the things that you will allow to happen, but you haven't actually been faithful to this concern, and that you've overreacted generally. What do you say to that?
Well, when we pulled down South by, people said that we were overreacting, and it was unthinkable, and it was a really hard thing to do, knowing the impact that was going to have on so many lives. But I'll tell you, within 10 days, it was no longer something we were doing alone. It was everybody was doing that around the country, and it was an easier decision to make than a lot of people recognized, because you could see this cloud come across the world. And I was talking to mayors in Europe and Western Europe, and then on the Pacific coast. I mean, you knew what was coming. It was as clear as night and day. So no, I don't think that we reacted. I think the fact that our mortality rate is half of the state number is really as far as I need to go. Yeah. If there was a way for us to bring back those 30,000+ lives of Texans that have died, to have the same rate we have, we should do that immediately. With respect to events, I'm not passing the buck here, but I will say that we're guided by science and our public health officials. It's our public health officials that are saying, which events are going forward and which are not, and we're following the lead of those folks. ACL had a gate around it. They could say, you don't get to come in here unless you're vaccinated or unless you have a test result. They can control the population that's coming in, the people that are inside. When you do a parade, you have 60,000 people. There's no controls. It's just a group that gathers. Now, that is inconsistent with Austin FC Stadium. It's inconsistent with the football games.
Well, the very weekend that the Veterans Day parade didn't happen, there was a football game at University of Texas with 90,000 people in the stands, certainly to watch them lose, because that's all they do. Right. Could have canceled that.
And that's not within the province of the health authority.
Can you fix the
Right.
football team at least? Could you do that?
You know, I often tell people that who say that I have a tough job that actually that's not really, it's all relative, right? Because only 90% of the people in the city think they could do my job better than I do. But the football coach,
100%.
100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mayor, let me stay with you and ask you, let me toggle over to public safety. Public safety, because this is another big local control issue, has become one. There are people all across Texas, and the legislature and the governor and others have amplified this idea, who believe that defunding the police is a thing and that it originated here, that defunding the police is your fourth child. True or false?
False.
Explain.
Well, you know, we recognize that public safety is the #1 priority in the city, and we wouldn't do something to compromise safety. And we did not defund the police. What we did do is we took not $150 million, but $20 million that was earmarked for positions that were funded, but we were not able to fill at that time, still not able to fill those positions. And we took those dollars and we put it to mental health first responders. We expanded the capacity of EMS. We created space for women in dangerous domestic violence situations to be able to get out of their homes to a place. Right now, there's like a 3-month wait. We needed to fix those things. It was $20 million. Our police right now in our budget are being paid more than we have ever paid APD in the history of the city. Their budget is higher than it has ever been. But what those folks are counting is, we took like the forensic lab, and in working with the prosecutors in the city, for years they've been trying to make that independent so it has greater credibility in court, and because we did have an issue with a backlog of rape tests. So we took those same people and created a civilian head, so that it has greater credibility and it takes care of these issues. But no one's job changed. The function didn't change. We did not move money out of public safety or change anybody's job other than what I just described with positions that were funded but not filled.
So you know, Mr. Mayor, perception is reality. So let's say you're right on the facts. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to say this is what the case is. Didn't you blow it on comms, on messaging? Because somehow over time, the message got out completely counter to what you just said. And it gave the legislature and state leaders an opportunity to make an example, rightly or wrongly, of Austin as it related to public safety funding.
We were like kindling, and it didn't happen just on the right, it happened on the left as well. On the day we took the action, there were immediate headlines and tweets. I saw it on social media saying, yay, we defunded police, and oh my God, they defunded police. On the very day that we did this, I sent out my social media and said, we just did something that was real important, but one thing we did not do was defund police. But no one wanted to hear that. I mean, the local media didn't want to hear that. No one wanted to hear that because the other story was so great, and it played into the national narrative, right? So the national narrative of people on both the right and the left trying to really run and push that issue. It really didn't make any difference what we did because they had the messaging component they wanted to run with, and you're absolutely right. It was a comms failure on our part, but I couldn't make my voice any louder.
Judge, you know that when you talk to the mayor's counterparts in other cities or when you talk to your counterparts in the other big urban areas, there is a conversation going on, not disrespectful of you all or of this region, but it's an acknowledgement of the reality. Well, they came after Austin, and in doing so, they gave themselves permission to come after all of us. There's kind of like a thanks a lot, Austin conversation going on in other places, right? What do you do about that? What do you say about that?
That's a good point. So I've been sued, I think, twice by Greg Abbott through my 1 year in office. The first time
you get sued one more time, you get a little badge.
I didn't mention his name yet. I don't think.
And so there was one time. Let's see. Oh, it was New Year's. So I and the mayor and the health authority decided, hey, there's a pandemic going on. There's a surge of crazy proportions. The spread is wild. We want to implement a curfew around New Year's, and that's when People tend to go out New Year's Eve, right? Congregate in bars. So we did. He sued us. He, let it actually stay in effect. So there was a curfew. But then when we ended up in court, our defense was, hey, you let El Paso County do the same thing, I don't know, a couple of weeks or months before that. And as I remember, Ken Paxton's attorneys were like, maybe unaware of that fact, but they soon figured out that because of our action, they didn't approve of the El Paso action either. So
You're telling them something they didn't know.
It's something, yes.
At the end of the day, this is just about you guys.
Yeah. So I agree with your point that, just like we like to, talk about Republicans in certain ways, they like to use Austin and Travis County as an example. But in the end, I've got to say that local government in Texas has been on the side of science, and were it not for Lena Hidalgo, Clay Jenkins, Mayor Adler, Nuremberg, did I get that right, in San Antonio, we would be much worse off as a state. And the fact that there is a thing such as local control, which I think Governor Abbott used to fight for and used to, I think, sue Obama or someone about local control. If that were not a part of Texas government, and if we couldn't listen to our local health authorities when there are like rabies outbreaks, we would be a mess. It's a huge state. There's 254 counties here. Local control, there's a reason for that in Texas.
Yeah. Judge, we had two, as you know, on this, staying with public safety, we had two interesting votes in this area over the last 6 months. The reinstatement of the camping ban and the rebuff of Proposition A. Two very different messages if you're just facile about this from the outside. What did you take away from those two outcomes?
Did I tell you that we invested in pre-K in Del Valle ISD heavily
no.
using our ARPA dollars?
Come on. Do a little camping ban for me. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from that is that one was held in November, which is a time when you have high voter turnout, and one was held in, May, when is a time when you have lower voter turnout.
So the only reason that the camping ban was reinstated was because it was a May election and not a November election.
I mean, if you're asking for like a political analysis of the likelihood of things like that passing, yeah, I think that's one issue.
I wish UT had a punter as good as you. Mr. Mayor, would you talk to me about the reinstatement of the camping ban and the rebuff of Proposition A, which seem to be two very different outcomes? What do you take away from that as it relates to public safety?
I think they were two really different issues. With respect to the first one on the camping ban, no one likes seeing camping. I don't like seeing camping. I think that we had a community that stood up and said, this is not acceptable. We're seeing tents. You need to make the tents go away. Now, some of the people voted in favor of that because they just want the tents to go away. And they really don't care what happens. You can put people on camp areas at the outskirts of town and give them tickets, just make the tents go away. Some people voted yes for that because they said to the city council, you need to be doing a better job of taking care of these people. And we're going to vote to end this camping ban because we want you to fix it. This condition we're seeing is not right. I mean, I looked at that vote and putting all the politics aside, it was hard for me I want tents to go away too. Because that's not an acceptable thing. I wish the vote actually had given us some money to actually do something. It didn't, which created some challenges. But I think that's what that vote was. People in the community don't want to see tents. But on the policing issue, that I think was a referendum. When they first started doing that, I said this election is going to turn on whether or not people feel safe. Austin is one of the safest big cities in the entire country. I think we're like in the top 4. And people know that we're a safe place. Yes, our numbers are going up, and it's a concern, and we need to address them. And yes, there are huge percentage increases, but that's because our numbers start off so tiny to begin with. So there's work we need to do, but in our community, people feel safe. So I think that this last election, which was 69%, was
not a close vote.
Oh my God! I was hoping for a number that was in the 60s.
You almost got a 7.
Almost got a 7. In fact, it was 69%. But I think that was people saying, we're okay with what it is that the city's doing. You know, when we take calls from 911 and we say police are not going to respond to animal control calls anymore or take notes at a fender bender after the fact, we're going to have crime technicians do that. That actually speeds up response times because police aren't having to do that kind of thing. People want us to find those kinds of answers. They want to have a cadet school that doesn't have videos where all of, you know, the training videos where all the police are white and all the criminals are black. And that doesn't belong in our cadet classes. So we need to fix these things. And we are, and it's going to make our police even stronger, and it's going to make our city even safer.
You mentioned the numbers. I happen to have the numbers right here. And I want to ask you about that because that has become a big talking point. In fact, the entire premise of Save Austin Now was in part these numbers as a catalyst for what they believe was proper action. Let's acknowledge, like many cities in America, not just in Texas, Austin has seen an uptick in homicides since the beginning of the pandemic.
Almost every major city.
Like many cities in the country. So far this year, the last numbers I have are a couple days old, but so far this year, the city's recorded 82 homicides, at least the last numbers that I saw, maybe higher than that now, which would be up more than 70% over last year. It's the city's highest homicide rate in 2 decades. It's also true, though, that other forms of crime have dropped in Austin, and that overall crime in Austin is down from the beginning of the 2010s. So you think the numbers actually don't tell the whole story, or at least it's a mixed bag?
Yeah, it's not a mixed bag about whether or not Austin is safe relative to other cities, because we are, and that's an objective fact. That overall crime is going down is true as an objective fact. Right. It is also true that homicides this year are up substantially, almost 80%. And that is a concern. And we're working with the county, we're working with the DA, we're working with the county attorney to get illegal guns off our street, to be able to anticipate the domestic situations that result in people dying before that happens. I mean, there's a lot of predictive stuff we can do if we put our focus on preventing crime rather than just dealing with crime after it happens. And that's the future of the city. We're a safe city because we do these kinds of things, and we have to continue to push on it if we're going to maintain our standing as one of the safest cities. You know, most cities in the country would trade in a heartbeat for our crime situation that we have in Austin.
We're going to go to questions in the audience in about 5 minutes. Let me encourage you to get up at the microphone. I've also got some questions pre-submitted that I'll ask. I want to ask off the topic of tonight first. Judge Brown, I can't resist asking you about your old boss, who finally launched his campaign for governor this week. Today he reported a few Beto heads over there, apparently. Today he reported raising more than $2 million in his first 24 hours as a candidate. His campaign says this is the most ever raised on the first day by a Democratic candidate for governor in the history of Texas. We do know that he raised more in one day. I couldn't believe this, so I had to look it up. He raised more in one day than Lupe Valdez raised during her entire campaign in 2018, in one day. And yet, I realize I'm risking the wrath of Beto Twitter, and let me tell you, there is nothing more ferocious or unforgiving than Beto Twitter. But isn't this race going to be very, very, very tough, bordering on nearly impossible for him to win in this cycle, in this state, in this political environment?
So I was with Beto in a Senate race from, I don't know, I think basically the night that Trump won, we started texting each other that he should run for U.S. Senate. And we got, I got to say, that same reception that everybody, we had really small crowds at first. Every event that we would go to, people did not think there was any way in the world he could ever beat Ted Cruz or come close to it. And we all know that what a couple 100,000 votes was the end result there, and obviously well within making that a very winnable race. I think the same thing's going to happen here. The fact that he is such a prodigious fundraiser. I was his finance director on the Senate race. We raised $80.3 million. Had nothing to do with me. Everything to do with Beto's ability to connect with people. And I think as they see that again over the next year, I think the people who think that it's going to be a tough race are accurate. It will be a tough race, but I think that Beto I've never seen a politician that can connect with people
The
the way he
difference,
can.
Judge, is he was an unknown quantity in 2018. He caught everybody off guard, flat-footed. He's a known quantity now. Does that work against him?
I don't think he caught Ted Cruz off guard. I think Ted Cruz tried everything that he could. They saw it coming. They saw us raising more and more money every quarter. We outraised Ted Cruz one quarter. He knew what was coming at him, and he threw everything at him that he could. And I think the same thing is going to happen here with Abbott. Abbott's obviously got a lot of vulnerabilities that he did not have in the past with COVID, with the power grid, everything like that. And I mean, you cannot underestimate Beto. I'm obviously a fan, but I also have not met another politician that's as good as he is at connecting with people. And I think Texans really responded to that in 2018, and I think they'll respond to it again this time.
Mayor, I cannot resist asking you about your old friend Pete Buttigieg. Hallelujah, it's finally infrastructure week, right? After all the promises. What does the BIF mean for Austin? I want you to be specific if you can. It's $35 billion coming to Texas. Obviously, a portion of that's going to come here. What's it going to mean as a practical matter for us a year from now, 2 years from now?
I think we're going to see things happen on the ground that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. I think it gives us great potential to be able to move forward on Project Connect more quickly and more broadly than we had originally thought. It increases the chances that we're going to be able to do the cap over I-35 and do that project in a way that pulls communities together and doesn't needlessly take and displace people. I think all over the country it's going to mean more charging stations, greater electrification opportunities. I mean, this is a huge deal, and an infrastructure bill like this is what people have talked about for the last 15 years.
So what do you estimate what will be your take out of that $35 billion?
I'm trying really hard to get that number, and I don't know.
You do not know. Legitimately do not know.
Because a lot of it is grant dollars, right? There's a certain amount of money that we're going to get, but a lot of the dollars are grant dollars. So like a lot of the federal programs, it's going to take Austin competing with other cities, coming forth with what our proposals are. We're well poised with that because our region has a lot of shovel-ready projects that a lot of other people are now scurrying to go and create. Yeah. We have lots of shovel-ready projects.
Okay. With that, we're out of time. It's been a great hour. It's gone by very fast. We've covered a lot of ground. Thanks to Mayor Steve Adler, Judge Andy Brown for being here. Give them a hand, please. I hope that we'll see you back here as I've now started to think about same batch time, same batch channel. Do you like that? A dad joke to leave you with. On the 8th of December with the police chief and on the 13th of December with the superintendent of Austin ISD. For more coverage from the Texas Tribune, texastribune.org. To become a member, texastribune.org/join. A big hand again for our friends at Batch Craft Beer and Kolaches. Thank them for hosting us. We'll see you soon. Thanks to all. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.